so we will post this at another time. So welcome everybody. My name is Alistair Tulloch. I am the pedagogical lead at EECD, working in PowerSchool, Power Teacher, Power Teacher Pro, and we are here today looking at attendance from in the K to 8 world, which we call daily attendance. I'd like to introduce to you my co-pilot, Lindsay McDonald. I'll let you introduce yourself, Lindsay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I work with the SIS specialists, and I work a lot with the pedagogy team with Alistair as well at EECD.
At ECD, yep. I live in Bathurst, so I, mostly talk with people through the link, and it seems to work really well. I just wanted to start off by saying I'd give you folks a little bit of background. As you know, the 10-year plan in education came out, and there are a number of measures that the department and districts and schools are going to be tracking, and one of those happens to be attendance. So for this past year, we've been working with the SIS specialists. We've reached out to AAs. We've worked with your data and accountability people. We've worked with people at the department, policy and planning, and we've taken a look at all things attendance within the SIS. And we discovered that there were some areas that were going very well, but we also had some inconsistencies in other places that we need to address and revisit. And we also came up with some new ones. To make sure that our attendance data is reliable and valid. And so we have 3 target groups that all these initiatives are definitely going to help. One of them is first and foremost the students at the school level. So schools are now going to have more accurate data to attend to a student needs, particularly if a student starts to have some chronic absenteeism. We should have more reliable data around that. We are also going to have more reliable data as a district, and the province is going to be has said that we're going to be creating our baseline data for attendance for this year. And so everything that we're doing today and throughout the year is to get a clear picture on student attendance at those 3 different levels. So while the 10-year plan is saying EECD needs this is information that can be valuable to everybody. So we're coordinating these presentations at the EECD level so we can help with some consistency and let you know that we are here to support you. So one of the first things that we did is we revisited the data standard around attendance. I included that in this link invite, so it's there for you, and you can see it was published on July 1st this summer. And it's a great document because it outlines everything, kind of like when the comments should be used, what are the codes, and whether it actually counts, as in terms of on the report card or not on the report card. For example, students can be absent for some of them, but it doesn't impact on the report card. So there's just a few of them I'd like to highlight here today. One of the big changes is school programming. And so school programming would encompass a number of the other things that we had before. So for example, there's no more co-op. There's no more guidance code. And part of the reason for that is that it's not always appropriate to say that a child has gone to guidance. It could be a very personal, quiet matter, and we don't need everybody to know. So if they're at a school-sanctioned program within their building, or in the case of co-op, outside of their building because they're attending to their student learning in some capacity, not necessarily formally like math, then that's a code to say that they're not sitting in the classroom, but we do know that they are doing something for school. So that's one to note. The tardy is the same, in-school suspension is the same. Attendance not required. We're going to be talking about that one today a little bit more. In PowerSchool, if you do not submit attendance, the default value that's attached to the student in the background is present. And that is not true all the time. So if in the past, for example, if we had students that were on behavior plans where they were only attending school on certain days, then sometimes we weren't putting anything in at all. We were just leaving it as attendance not taken for that child, and that meant that they were actually present. The department wants a clear picture on when kids are there and not there. So we need to start looking at using these codes appropriately to actually capture if the child's in the building or not. So obviously this is a code that is not going to impact on their attendance values, but it will tell us that they're not in the building. Out of school suspension is the same. School activity, we've got some new recommendations around when that should be used. School sports team, we no longer have the NBIAA code. Everything is going to be listed under school sports team. There's also a non-school sports team as well. Bereavement's the same, illness is the same, inclement weather is still the same. The wording has changed for what used to be other excused absence is now called other informed absence, because this actually indicates that we've been told where the child is. And in our case, it's not always appropriate that we say whether that's excusable or not. If the parent has called us up to say the child's not there, then we are informed. Then we also have the non-sports related, and that counts. And the ever-present unexplained absence, we don't know where the child is. Are there any comments about the standard? So if you could type your questions in the box right in here, then to let us know. Lindsay will either interrupt me or chime in with her wisdom on this as well too. That would be wonderful. Oh, I see in the comment box there about the co-op. Yes, we may. The reason I only bring up the co-op in this K-8 world is that some of you may be in other schools at another time, right? So it's always good to know that those codes are out there.
Alistair, Ann has a good question that is good to be related for here. Will teachers be able to see all the codes as they could not see them all last year?
The answer to that question is no. But we did send out the list to the districts to ask which codes they wanted their teachers to see. The common answer that I heard was that they were going to keep it as the status quo. Attendance codes can be adjusted at the school level. So if there are particular codes that schools would like teachers to have and others not to have, that is a request that goes through your district to EECD. And there can be a process in place for that to do that. But no, not all the codes are going to be given to teachers. For example, it's not appropriate that we let teachers decide about suspensions. That would be one that would just be in the office. And does that explain? Great. Any other questions, folks?
So, Alistair, Darlene's asking what is the difference between TA and TAA? So maybe you could bring the PDF back up again.
Sure. So the standard that we're looking at here covers attendance codes for the entire grade range. So in elementary schools, we might be looking at having some schools take attendance in the morning, and then they open up their grade book again, and then they'll take attendance in the afternoon. So a child could be late in the morning, and then when they open up their grade book, they could have been present, but then they change it to tardy in the afternoon. Again, some of these codes are very school specific. They use them a lot in like in middle schools, like if the kids go home, when they're actually visiting a new teacher after lunch, that type of thing. TAA and TAP is AM PM, and that would not be used at the high school. That would be something that would be more for elementary and middle school. Darlene, does that help? Okay, thank you. All right, so the first part of our presentation today is just to actually talk about the standard things that we are always doing, and doing little surveys around the province, talking with people. We found a few little inconsistencies, so we wanted to make sure that we revisited these just to make sure that everybody's gets reminded. We all need a good reminder every once in a while, just to make sure that we're doing things properly. So the first thing I want to talk about is the school calendar. So under school setup, within the calendaring section, we've got the calendar setup. And this is a training environment, everyone, just so you know. But I've set this up the way typical most, K-8 schools, they have a Monday to Friday schedule. It's good to make sure you have the correct day, because this also here drives the bell schedule, the matrix view, all these sort of things to match the day. So we want to make sure that all this is properly aligned. Some schools have more than one bell schedule, like they'll have a regular day, but they'll also have maybe like a half day on Wednesday, that type of thing. So they may have a Wednesday schedule. When school is in session, we always make sure this button right here, so you see at the top, it says in school session. The membership value. In New Brunswick, we are always coding our membership value as 1. And you can kind of think of it this way. It means that the value for today is equal to 1, meaning the building is open. It's the codes that we have in the background that are used to determine whether it's going to be a half day or a full day. So if we have AM medical, that's worth 0.5. So that 0.5 is multiplied with the 1 to give us a 0.5 absence, because the report card reports on absences, and so therefore there's a multiplication factor. If we have a half day of school, let's say it's a report card professional development day where the kids go home at lunchtime, we don't change this to 0.5. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We leave this as 1, and then we make sure we use codes that are going to be for AM or PM, depending on what is appropriate. We always leave the tracks clicked on. Even when we are turning the day off because school is not in session, you can leave these tracked on. These two fields over here, known as the type and the reason, I do believe it is. I'll take a look at a spin to the top here, or the note. There we go. Both of these fields do not impact on anything for the attendance count or for information on the report card. Most of this information is for you to keep track of what may actually happen. So if you turned this day off and didn't put in anything in here, you might say to yourself, geez, I wonder why we closed on that day. So you can, if it was infrastructure, for example, and the day was closed, you might put in some words in there to remind you on what it was, just as an example. Any questions about that so far? Just a reminder too that you have to look at your calendar. It's always good to look at your calendar at the beginning and the end of each month, just to make sure that the month that has gone by is accurate, and also that the future dates that are coming are accurate as well. Also too, when it comes to printing report cards, you have to have your calendar addressed and set up at least 24 hours before teachers start printing off report cards. The rollover process happens at night in PowerSchool, so that if you make a change here, it takes one cycle through the evening for the information to be picked up to be pushed to the report card. So if a teacher prints this morning and then you adjust the calendar in the afternoon, then it's obviously you're not going to be picking up the most accurate information. So it's always good to let teachers know that they can't print until you've actually adjusted the calendar for the report cards. Okay, probably one of the most common things that you do for attendance is the phone call that comes into the office. So when a child is being called in, and the parent says they're not coming in, you can select the child from the start page, click on their attendance, and in here we're on daily. So you click the day of the week that we're talking about, and then you use the drop down and select the appropriate code. So maybe it's a medical AM. And providing a comment. And make sure you put your initials after there so we know who to speak to if we have to. So I shouldn't say info. Medical appointment is good, and maybe who called in so that you can chase down the information afterwards. We don't use the time in, the time out. We don't use time calculations, so you don't have to click off the box, and you don't have to put a time comment. It's just this information at the top that's most important, and then you click submit. And then you'll see it show up here. This data will be pushed to the child's homeroom, and the teacher will not be able to change it. This would also be the same that you might do for suspensions. And if you were doing it for suspensions, you could click on the meeting, and you could actually click on the date range, and you could actually put it in for the entire week if you know it's a 5-day week. So let's see, out of school suspension. And because we're talking daily attendance, it's only the homeroom that you have to put it in. We may have a few schools here where they actually take meeting attendance at the middle school level. Just 1 second, please. Sorry, everyone. Just somebody just stepped in my office. If your school takes meeting attendance, then you would have to put these codes in all the boxes right here. But for the majority of our schools here today, we're looking at daily, so you would only have to put it in their homeroom. And of course, make sure that you submit to commit. Other reasons why you may come in here for an individual student: there could be outside services coming into the building, there could be guidance appointments, there could be any of those hosts of reasons where you're dealing with one child. Okay, supply teachers. When you're dealing with taking attendance for supply teachers, it's really important that you submit attendance for the supply teacher through the teacher's schedules. So if we take a look at teacher schedules, and let's say it's Leo that's out, and we're taking homeroom attendance, even if all the students are there for that day, you still have to make sure you click on the chair and you actually submit for that class, even if they're all there. And I'll show you why in a moment. So that means homeroom attendance has been taken for Leo. If we go back to the teacher submission status page, you'll see that we've got Leo over here now that has actually had his attendance taken. I want to show you something though. This school has not been configured correctly for each of the sections. So if we take a look at English, the kindergarten English language arts, according to the submission status page, it says we're counting this as part of attendance tracking, when really the office only wants to know about attendance being taken for homeroom. And so what we have to do is, so I'll keep this one in mind, so we're looking at English language arts. So if I go into Leo's schedules, and I take a look at the section level of his course, so here's the language arts. Right here, exclude from attendance. By selecting this box, it will remove that section of the English language arts from Leo's list, and the teacher submission status page will no longer look at that course to see whether he's taken attendance or not. Look, I'll show you again. So if I click on Leo now, you'll notice that there's only math and you and your world that are still there. If I do the same thing with math and I do the same thing with you and your world, when you're doing the teacher submission status each morning for safe arrival, you'll get a clear picture right up front of what has been taken and what has not. Ideally, what you would like is that it would turn green immediately for Leo, so you know that his homeroom attendance has been taken. So I would have to go into math and into you and your world and click off those 2 boxes for it to be excluded. If anybody's here from a 6 to 8 world where they're taking meeting attendance like a high school, you would do this the opposite way around. You would turn off the high school and leave the other courses on, and then you know the attendance would be taken for each period. You can have this actually configured for your whole school all at once. If you submit a help desk request to your SIS specialist, they can come in and take all the courses that are not homeroom and have them deselected all in one shot, so the only things that will show up here are the homeroom. Are there any questions so far? All right. So before we get into kind of some of the new things I want to talk about, I'm just going to review quickly about what we've covered so far in terms of our standard things that we're asking people to do, and this is just a review. So one of them is the calendar, making sure that you address your calendar at least once a month. Making adjustments to it, like make sure Christmas is, the Christmas break is turned off, and make sure March break is turned off so that the days of contact are accurate on the report card. When students are coming in as individuals, so that would be the phone call in, maybe it's a pickup from a parent, maybe the office is suspending a child, guidance is meeting, or outside services, you would select the one student and go in through on the attendance page, and you can either do it by one day at a time, or you can actually do it by a week by looking at the full grid of the schedule. Just a note, just a reminder to everyone to make sure you put a comment in with your initials after it. When you have a supply teacher, make sure you're coming in through the teacher schedules, and even if all the kids are present, make sure you still click on the chair. And if you get a piece of paper that has only one child absent, then you make sure that you still go in and do it through the teacher schedule, not as an individual student. If you do it as an individual student, then the teacher submission status will not change. And even though the kids are default present, it does not show that the attendance was actually addressed on that day. So we want to make sure that the attendance is actually proven to be submitted by having the green class status by the teacher. And to configure your sections, you want to make sure you want to exclude any course that does not count for the teacher submission status that you don't want to track. Any questions about those reviews? Lindsay, do you want to throw anything in there? Is there anything I'm missing at this point?
No, you've
covered so far? Okay, so some of the new things that we'd like people to attend to. This is for half days of school. Okay, so this is when you know there's going to be no school in the afternoon. And part of this is going to be required of your teachers as well. So this is a communication to your staff from your administration that if school is is in for only half a day, you don't change the calendar to 0.5, you still leave it as a 1, but the attendance codes that go in have to be in for AM codes only. So if I'll use Leo's class here as an example again. Let's take this, and let's say I know Tuesday, August 28th is going to be a half day, and William's mother calls in and says William is going to be sick today. It's a half day. So in here we have to make sure that we choose AM absent only because he's really only missing half a day. If we put in illness like this for a half day, the report card will actually report an extra half day of absence that is not the case for William. So school's only open for half a day. All the codes need to be the AM codes if the child's not coming in. And then when you submit, that child will be only counted as a half day absence because school was only in for half a day. Okay, partial programming. So this would be for the student that is on a behavior plan and is only coming to school a couple of days a week. So let me see, I'll use this child right here. So in this case, we're looking at going with meeting attendance, picking the date range that the child is going to be out, and again, we're looking at homeroom only. So for example, we're looking at attendance not required. So you may have a situation like this where Meadow is allowed to come in the afternoon, so that means attendance required not in the morning, attendance not in the morning, and attendance not required in the morning. So what this means is Meadow comes to school in the afternoon on Mondays, all day on Tuesdays, in the afternoon on Wednesdays, all day on Thursdays, and then in the afternoon on Fridays. This way we can capture accurately that the kid is not in the building because their attendance is not required. What we're also asking you to do in the comment code is make sure you put in a comment in here and your initial. IBSP is the initials for a behavior plan. And we ask that you only do this out. One of the things I like to do is to copy it before I close it, because then I can just open up the next box and paste it in without having to type it again. But some of you, I imagine, are quite a lot faster than I am for typing. This way right here, we are going to get a clear picture of when the child is in the building and not required to be in the building without it being penalized against them. Any questions about special programming? If you're in a middle school, that uses daily, and the kid's not supposed to be in school all day, then you can set it to all, and it would fill it in for all periods all the way down, because we would know that they're not required to be there for any of those periods.
I have a question, Alistair. The question is, do we have to enter that for the whole year?
The recommendation is that you do not recommend it for the whole year, because the premise is that the student should show improvement and will be coming back to school, and then the number of days would be reduced. So what we're recommending is that you don't do it any more than a week at a time. We know that requires some attention to making sure that it gets in there, but if it has to come out, then you have to submit a help desk request, and the data has to be erased by EECD. And we want schools to be the owner of their attendance, because you know the children more than we do, and their attendance is part of the school's responsibility. So no, not the whole year, just either daily, one day at a time if you wish, or you no more than a week at a time. That way you're not having to find out where is what.
And if the schools don't want to use this meeting option, they can still use the daily option.
They can do it
for the full day.
That's correct. They can go in through the daily, and they can actually just do it one day at a time if they want, like this. Just remember that this right here really only goes for the attendance in the home room. You can't do it by period by period. This is for a daily attendance entry.
Straight K to 5. Maybe just for doing that.
Yeah.
We've got another question. What if a student is attending for 1 or 2 hours in the morning?
Only. So then that would be, yeah, that's kind of like on the cut line, right? So we would say that they were there in the morning and that their attendance was not required in the afternoon. Even though it's not a full morning, it's more accurate than what we had before, which was default present. So we want to make sure that we're saying that their attendance is not required for the afternoon, and part of their behavior plan that is actually written would actually say, you could actually put it in the comment too if you wanted. You could say child is required to stay for the first hour, then goes home, but it would be attendance not required for the afternoon. No problem. Okay, so one of the ones is when we have storm dates or school is closed for reasons such as the furnace that I highlighted earlier before. What we're asking, so this is what we discovered. We discovered that if there is attendance values in your school for like future ones, so let's say we'll use suspension because it's probably the most common one that's going to happen. If a child gets suspended for 5 days and they're out on Monday for that full week, but then there's a snowstorm on Thursday, that child is actually still marked as out of school, even when the calendar has been adjusted to not being in session. And guess what? It shows up on the report card. So we actually have a child that's being dinged for an absence when the building wasn't even open. So what we're asking schools to do is to clear the attendance values student by student with for the day that it was closed. So let's stick with our scenario that we have here. We have a 5-day suspension. The data gets entered in on Monday. Students are for 5 days. Then snowstorm on Thursday. You come back in on Friday. This is what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to select all the students, go to reports, system reports, MB reports, and run the period attendance by class report for all the students, for all the teachers, and we want it for the homeroom if you are a daily school, and you click it off on all the other ones here if you're a meeting school for those middle school people that may be with us. And then obviously if it's the Friday, you're going to go back one day and you're going to run the attendance report for that one day and see which students had future attendance dates already set on that closed date. Once show your comments, click submit. And the list of students that are showing up here, see there's William, there's the one that I had entered earlier. Then you would go back to that date, go back to that student and clear the attendance value for the storm day back to present. And then when all the students in your school are set back to present, then you go back to your calendar. Pick that Thursday that was closed. Set it to all null values. Remember, you don't have to clear these out. Put in that it was a weather event. And then you've got your record. Actually, that's a joke, by the way. I hope you're not going to be putting all that stuff in there. Storm of the century. And then all the values in the background will be set to present, and there will be no false data on the report card. Any questions? Did I miss anything, Lindsay?
I was just going to say that was explained perfectly, and
Okay.
That's why there was no questions.
Again, I have a very polite audience. They're on the other link and they're saying all kinds of stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, I have nothing else to share with you. Just those things, just to recap the new things that we're looking at. One of them is we want to make sure that for partial programming that we're putting attendance not required when students do not have to be in the building. That if your school's only open for half a day and you know it's only half a day, you should be using AM codes only. And for when school is closed unexpectedly, that you run the period attendance report under the MB reports, find the individual students that had future attendance values entered, that you change them to present, and then you go back and change the calendar to be not in session. Just so you know, Lindsay, I'm looking at people's comments now so I can see Audrey's. Audrey, I'm recording a bunch of these, and as soon as I got it figured out, I'm going to be making a YouTube channel, and I've like the one I recorded today, and I'm going to be posting these and then sending out my fancy YouTube site to you, and then you can have these to review again in the future. We also have, I'd like to take a moment and show everybody the following. Many of you may already know this. Take a moment to do a little sell job here. On the one site, we have the PowerSchool Playbook. And the PowerSchool Playbook has been set up with filters on it. And so you can pick your audience. So you can pick yourself. You can pick your level. and you can pick a category content. So in this case here, I'll go with attendance. And all the documents, we have 154 of them in here, will now be shortened for all the issues that have to do with attendance. And you'll see we actually have some videos for some of them. And so there may be some things in here you might want to spend some time plowing through. Maybe there's some good things in there for you that will work for your job. And if there's nothing there for a particular task, feel free to email me and I will make that document and put it up here for you, and I'll send you a personalized copy. You can also you can actually set an alert on this site as well too. So anytime there's a new document that's been updated, added or deleted, you will get a notification so you can keep yourself up to date with the most current documentation to help you with your job. Any questions, folks? There in the one of the documents that I sent you, Gail, that's actually in there. I think it's called the technical documents for the AAs and the administrators. There's a recommendation for how long what is considered tardy, but we know that the definition of tardy is really. No, let me clarify that. The definition that we have in there is around half day. We debated whether we were going to define what tardy was meant, and we recognize that that is a very local discussion because of when buses come in and you know, the relationship you have with parents for drop-off times and all that sort of stuff. So I defer you back to your school and your district to talk about what tardy would be. Some teachers say if you're stepping in the door when the bell rings, you're late, and other teachers could care less. They're going to just pat you in the back and say thank you for coming. So it's a very wide open one. Well, folks, I'll stay here along with Lindsay, and if you have any questions, feel free to stay. And if not, then you can head off to the rest of your wonderful day. So Tina, do you mean that they would be considered AM absent if they're that much longer? Right. Okay. And is your mid-morning recess around 10 o'clock? You're welcome, Karen. 10:15. Yep. I've heard other schools do it the same way as well too, but it's a very school-specific thing. Yes. How do we record students that leave 15 minutes at the end of the day? There is no nice, tidy way to actually do that in PowerSchool. That would have to be something that you just really kind of, because correct me if I'm wrong, Gail, there seem to be some repeat offenders on that more than other students. And so that would be something that I think you would track individually in your school, and that would be something you would bring up with the parents. But you can't record it in PowerSchool. There's no code for it. Shelley, you're very welcome. Anything else, Lindsay? Okay, I'm going to stop recording, everyone.